Right, here we are. Something I've talked about doing for a little while was to take the BMW S1000XR out for a ride. So this will be the first time I've been on a four-cylinder bike since 1980, which was my GS550 Suzuki, which was just an old bag of nails, but it felt an absolute dream machine to me. So clearly this is a step change, several step changes away from that. And again, the purpose of today's ride really was just to establish the difference in feel really between the new 1250GS and the S1000XR. So obviously one's two-cylinder flat twin, the other one's four-cylinder, isn't it? So I know it's going to feel different. This is a sports bike in an adventure bike's frame, although interestingly in BMW market them both as adventure bikes actually in their catalogue. So I'm really curious today just to sort of see how this feels and how comfortable I am. So Josh says that it's going to feel firmer, it's going to go around the corner like it's on rails. Obviously he's not seen my riding, but we shall come back to that one. But yeah, we'll take this one out a little further and we'll get a bit of a feel for us. So let's get on the road and see how we go. Ooh, that sounds different. Engine sort of spits into life, explodes into life. Whereas you've got the sort of the gentle, sedate rumble of the flat twin on the 1200, 1250, and obviously my 1200 RT as well. This one just sort of says immediately to you, I'm in a hurry. So, Lord, I pray for a safe journey. Always good just to work out where the biting point of the clutch is. Also feels distinctly lighter than the 1200. Okay, so just let's get the feel of the bike. Oh, this is so much easier to steer than an RT or a GS. I can see this is going to take just a little bit of getting used to, because with the gear changes, with the Boxer twin, you know you've changed gear, even with quick shifter. On this one, it's barely a click. So, first impressions, the engine feels urgent. Engine says to me, I'm in a hurry, I want to go. So I'm going to take the XR for a bit of a longer ride. You see, there I am, I'm in sixth. I didn't even realise I was in sixth there, because I think I'm used to sort of pre-tensioning the gear lever on the RT. On this one you probably just breathe on it and it changes gear. Okay, entering the NSL. So again, I think this is a full spec edition. This is a used bike, got 6,000 miles on the clock. You read some reports of a certain buzziness through the handlebars. I can feel that buzziness now. Again, that feels sort of totally alien to the to an RT rider. So no problem at all now, but would that be a problem on a day ride? I don't know. Guess you could partly alleviate that, because one of the first things I would always do on a bike like this would be to put some grip puppies on. You really get the impression the XR just wants to go. It feels like a sort of, you know, pardon the analogy, it feels like a sort of a caged lion, really. Just wants you to sort of flip the door open and phew, off it's going to go. Sure what my mentor's going to think of this gear changing. Well, no doubt he'll tell me though. Got to get used to the machine. Heated grips are on. And you get a sort of a GS-like level of wind protection from this screen at the front. Again, I'm looking at this and thinking that if I owned a bike like this, I'd probably put some kind of Vario screen on it just to deflect the air over my head. Well, so this is supposed to be like a super bike, heart and lungs transplanted into a GS's frame. And I've got to say, my immediate preference is I actually prefer the feel of this to the GS. Changing down, but there's really no need to. Very important on the test ride to look where you're going. As within cricket, it's very important for the batsman to watch the ball, isn't it? You get a lower fuel consumption on the XR. I believe it's sort of around the sort of 40 mark, something like that. Probably compared with sort of 50-ish on the GS. So the range on the bike is going to give you, I think, about 170 miles, something of that order. The seat is very comfortable. This fits me like a glove, to be honest. I feel myself talking myself into this, really. And the display, a little old-fashioned, I guess, in the today's sort of TFT world. But you'd imagine within the next 12 months that BMW are probably going to stick the multifunctional TFT onto more of the range, and I would expect they put it on this bike. Well, I've got to say, this is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying myself. I'm not really a GS sort of a person, to be honest. I don't know quite what it is with the GS, but I always feel as though it's not quite the bike for me, really. But as I say, this is the first four-cylinder I've ridden for, what, 38 years? And there's just a lot of punch here, not that I've discovered any of it yet. Less engine braking than the RT as well. I'd have just rolled off normally from a no speed limit 60 down to 30. I know it takes exactly 9 seconds. You don't get that level of engine braking on the XR. So you've got to discover the brakes. And the interesting thing as well, and I don't know quite why this is, I'm sort of doing 30 here through a village, but it actually feels like it's standing still. It's just like a racehorse, it just feels like it wants to go. And so much lighter. I mean, we haven't really got into the bends yet. We'll get into some proper bends later on in the ride, but the initial impression is that yeah, listen to that. traffic behind me for dead there. But yeah, as we get into some of the proper bends, we're going to head down the A428 from Northampton towards Bedford. We'll just skirt the north of Bedford, and then I'll cut up the classic, I think it's the 664. So I wanted to take the XR for a slightly longer ride really. Get the feel of the bike. I still consider myself an inexperienced back-to biker, even though I've got the badge that says I'm advanced. I believe that my roadcraft demonstrates a certain level of being advanced, but what I'm not advanced in, and I acknowledge this, is still my sort of my feel for motorcycling and the bike in particular. And I think part of next year's agenda will certainly be, I think, to, if I can, sort of sign up for some kind of track day. See if we can work on that a little bit. Handlebars very wide on this. Certainly an extremely comfortable sitting position. There is some vibration through the bars, but as I say, you can probably cure that with some grip puppies. And again, I know that BMW, as they tend to increase later models, tend to they iron these things out. They're on the case. I actually have to keep checking the gear indicator because I'm not too sure what gear I'm in. Right, little lesson there. I think I've actually learnt you don't have to use the clutch. The quick shift on this just feels just like literally just a click. Doesn't even feel mechanical. Okay, so just trying to roll down into the 30 there. Yeah, and again, from that point on the RT I would have just hit 30 without having to use the brakes at all. And I was probably coming in at about 37 there. So clearly less engine braking, but then I think that's to be expected, isn't it? It's interesting with the engine note, again, because my ear obviously has been tuned to a flat twin, but the engine note, you constantly feel like you want to change up. And even when you change up, you still feel like you want to change up. That urgency. And from what I'm told, the bike essentially sort of bursts into life when you get into the higher rev range. So just as I don't need to say this to my regular listeners, but you will know I don't really get into higher rev ranges. I'm not sure what they're for, to be honest. scare myself. Yeah, so were this my bike, I would want to do something about the airflow on the screen, so I'd fit a vario screen. I'd want some thicker grips on it, because as usual with BMW, I think they must make BMWs for people with really small hands actually. I always feel like I'm gripping a pair of cocktail sticks. I'd want to do something about that. But honestly, it just fits like a glove. And I think when you've got the lightness of the steering as well, it's a lovely bike. And I think for me as well, noticeably, it is so much lighter than the RT. I mean, the heaviness in the RT, I think the advantage is that at any kind of speed there is so much stability, and once it's moving, to be honest, I mean, it just floats around corners, and the fact that it's big as well, I mean, an accomplished rider can really sort of throw it around. You watch some of these you know, YouTube films of people throwing them around the mountain passes and hairpin bends and so forth in the Alps, so it can certainly do that. But I think there's no doubt at all, if you know, if you remove the weight and you've certainly got the urgency of this engine, then it's a very interesting combination. Totally different feel of bike actually. Yeah, you don't need the clutch. Once you're moving, the clutch is almost irrelevant, to be honest. Yeah, so the quick shifter is far superior to that on the RT. But as I understand it on the XR, there's such an overlap actually between the gears anyway that you know, it probably is a factor, isn't it? Again, I'm no expert. As I always make the point on these videos, I've come back to biking after nearly 40 years. And I'm just rediscovering the joy of motorcycling really, but of course what it means I've lost is all that sort of muscle memory, that confidence of throwing the bike around corners, which is coming slowly. But I don't want to presume a level of competence or confidence that I don't yet possess. Well, beautiful through the corners, I've got to say, what a joy. I think what I'd sum it up is there's a level of responsiveness that you don't get on the RT. The RT has such, I guess, what I call heavy steering, steers itself into corners, whereas on this you get the impression it's more, what's the word, more F16 than Tornado. Interesting, even in 6th I feel like I want to change up to 7th, 8th or 9th because of the urgency of the engine. Chilly day, the heated grips are sort of doing their best, but they can't sort of warm you all up. So you get a certain level of wind protection on your legs, but not a lot. Your chest is pretty well protected, but your sort of upper shoulders and your head is exposed to the wind blast. Okay, so beginning to approach Bedford now. I just need to navigate my way just through the north of Bedford just to get to the 664. As I say, the classic biker route. It feels like whichever gear you're in, you want to change up. But I guess the point is you don't need to. It's just getting used to that engine note and that responsiveness, I think. Not easy trying to combine an advanced ride with a road test on a strange bike. We're all part of the learning curve. I get the impression the XR doesn't really like towns. It wants to be out on the open road. Somehow feels caged in on this 30-mile-an-hour road, which is skirting the north of Bedford. I don't know, but again, I'm probably speaking from a position of ignorance, but do any of you use the XR for a commuting bike in urban situations? Yeah, fourth seems to be about the right gear for 30 miles an hour in town. So I think there's such a wide spread of what's the word, power. That's the right word, but it seems a very flexible bike. Yeah, navigation's worked out well. We're on the Kimbolton Road. Yeah, even the quick shifter down into second from third there is so light. So the last BMW I test rode up here was the GS Adventure, actually, on that really horrendous day with the weather. But today the sunshine's smiling on me. Well, fifth at 30 just feels very, very relaxed. About sixth. So does that. Interesting. Smoother, less urgent. No sense of any jerkiness. So a little experiment then as we come to leaving the national speed limit, or rather entering the national speed limit at 60 miles an hour in the next few minutes. Next few seconds. Let's just try let's try that in sixth, shall we? Can't go mad here because there's a right hand bend. Interesting. So there's a reasonable level of engine braking, but nothing like what you get on the flat twin of the Boxer engine. Whoa! Well, that's only 30 to 50, but even there, I've got to hang on in a way that I don't have to on the RT. That's the difference. Again, I didn't really comment on the GS1250 in dynamic mode, so I can't really comment on that. Right, so once you hit 60, then in 6th, I think this is the vibration that people talk about on the XR. It's definitely there, so on a sort of I guess you know, a ride of a few hours, you're probably not going to worry about it too much. But over a day, These are the sort of roads I think that the bike was born for. Again, I'm not going to be pushing the limits today. But it's extremely willing to go. Target acquired. I would say the RT is a very relaxing bike to ride. Actually, it's rather like riding around in a big old armchair. It's very forgiving. It's very flexible. It's clearly heavier than this bike. This is a bike I think you've got to actively, what's the word? You've really got to be on it every second, I think. There's a sense of urgency, a sense that it's in a hurry. It means business. So I wouldn't describe this as a relaxing ride. It's certainly quite, what's the word? Extremely engaging. Firmer ride too, but not uncomfortable, certainly not uncomfortable. So I'm beginning to work this out now. It's a very comfortable seating position, you know, the nice wide bars as well, but I think with the engine's urgency and this sort of certain buzziness about it, not a relaxing place to sit. But I don't think you buy this bike to relax. I think you basically buy it to have a good old burn up, I would imagine. And of course today, old bloke on a bike, coming back to the bike, I'm just using a fraction of its potential, but it's just impressions really, that's all. Might be of interest to some folks out there. Maybe you're a bit like me, you know, you read some of the road tests by the experts and they're a bit over your head really, because they're sort of talking about things that probably you would never do, you would never use the bike for. Like if Saga did road tests. I'm not quite there yet though. Oh boy, there is such what's the word? A hard relationship between twisting the throttle and the speed you actually go at. There's just no sense of any lag at all, even in here I am 6th gear, 56 miles an hour, and you know, literally it's every slight movement of that throttle results in a difference in speed on the road in a very direct way. More so than the Boxer engine. So in terms of comparing this then with the GS, how would I describe it? you definitely know you're on a twin, even though you've got that sort of new 1250 with the new shift cam on. You know, you definitely know it's a twin. This is smoother, but a real sense of urgency here that you just don't get on the GS, I think. But in terms of the power band, I would say the GS delivers it. Might contradict myself now. The GS does actually deliver it in a less frantic way. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. This is if I sort of maybe just use one word, it would be frantic for this bike. It's everything about it. It's a bit like, you know, when you get a new puppy and it constantly wants to go until they fall asleep, of course. I think with the XR as well, the XR absolutely demands your attention, whereas the GS is the it's more like the and please forgive me for this, BMW engineers, it's more like the comfortable pair of slippers. But horses for courses. In terms of a bike that you want to live with day in, day out, it's going to be the GS, isn't it? No doubt about it. Particularly now with the extra 20 horsepower there, the smoother delivery of power, it's certainly cut the XR's lead. But what the XR, I think, definitely still has is that real sense of urgency. Just being a whole sort of like a frantic package, really. I mean, this is a super bike in an adventure frame, and it's a lot of fun. And you'll definitely enjoy either of them. But I think if it was a bike I was going to be riding over a couple of years, you know, sort of an all-purpose bike, the XR could definitely do the job. But I wonder actually whether on sort of longer journeys whether you might get a bit tired of the what's the word, the exciting nature, shall we say. Whereas the GS is going to be much easier to live with. Okay, got my favourite two corners here now in Kimbolton. Very sharp left-hander and a real test of your technique with a right-hander here. And the key is you've got to get right down. And even that probably I could have taken slightly wider out. But it's interesting, with the XR I've become very quickly acclimatised to it actually. I am really enjoying myself on this. Funnily enough, in a way that I didn't on the GS. But you always feel like you want to change up. Let's do it, shall we? Here we are, 5th. But even in 5th I feel like I want to change up at 28 miles an hour. If you've never ridden an XR and you've always ridden a flat twin, I'd say give it a go actually. It's just so different. And I don't think I would buy the XR as it currently stands. I think were BMW to cure the slight buzziness in the handlebars that is certainly there at, let's say, 60 miles an hour, not taken at 70 yet, we'll try it out at 70 on the dual carriageway in a few minutes. But if that could be cured, and if you put a TFT display on this, and I think if I had a Vario screen on it, I think you'd have a bike here that would be extremely capable. Not that it's not anyway. And the quick shift is an absolute delight on this. Yeah, I think I'm beginning to think the XR is like a fighter aircraft. whereas the GS is more your sort of long-range bomber. I speak as one who's come 40 years in the aerospace and defence industry, if you didn't realise that. Well, the power on this is incredible, and again I'm sure I'm not even scratching the surface. It just shifts. And again, in terms of ride, I'm not sure whether comfort's the right word, but the actual feedback through the road, this just feels glued to the road. The GS feels a very comfortable bike, but you're certainly boing around a little bit more on the GS than you do on this. This one is literally like it's riding on Velcro. Well, as usual, I'd always like to acknowledge Wollaston's BMW, Northampton. If you've never been there, you live in the vicinity, drop in and see them. Really nice group of blokes and ladies. Spend the time of day with them. Go and explore some options. You know, you fancy a test ride? They've been very generous towards me in terms of my test ride, and they know that you know, I'm a rider of still somewhat limited ability, but no problem. So they've got an excellent cafe there as well, and ride outs as well over the weekend. So big thanks to Josh and the team at Wollaston's for the opportunity to ride both these bikes. So I think I'm going to ask the question, if I could only own one bike, and it was either the S1000XR or the 1250GS, the exclusive version I rode, which one would I go for? And this might surprise you, but I think I'll go for the XR. On the base, it really puts a smile on your face. It makes you feel alive. I think the GS gets you there very efficiently. It's a very capable bike. It's the sensible choice. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It's the sensible choice. But life's too short to be sensible all the time, isn't it? Now then, if it came to my RT against the XR, which one would I go for? Now that's an interesting question. I think I'll have to sort of store that question slightly until I've ridden the RT 1250, and Gary in Wollaston's advises me it's probably going to be later this month, November 2018, when they get their first demo bike in, so I shall need to ride that one as well. I think for me probably the RT is the sensible choice. It just ticks all the boxes. I'm getting cold riding this bike. You know, on temperatures outside it's probably about 5 degrees, not particularly windy. I don't think I could ride this bike comfortably or happily through the winter, whereas the RT I can. The RT does the job for me, I've got to say. But again, if it's just a question of having a summer bike, then I think probably it will be the XR, you know, or certainly a derivative of in the future. Well, there's your display. As you can see, I've got my sat-nav 6 on the top, and the existing S1000XR display is quite plain, but to be honest, it tells you all you need to know. Everything's very, very clear there. All the information is nicely presented. From the front, you can almost mistake the bike for a GS, couldn't you, at sort of first glance? I think that big sort of concave shaped cooler on the front as well is probably going to give the game away that it is actually something a little bit different. You got absolutely these huge Brembo brakes on the bike as well, which you know, give you very good stopping, I've got to say. I'd suggest it's probably easier to clean, easier to live with than a GS in terms of its all the sort of nooks and crannies on it. I think the exhaust sounds absolutely wonderful. You can clearly attach panniers as well to it if you want to. Stick a top box on the back as well for the commute. Okay, and it's just an absolute racing stallion is this bike. As I say, I'm barely sort of scraping the surface. The quick shifter, I have to say, is probably the best I've ridden with. Not that I've ridden many bikes in my since I've come back to bike, but it just literally just clicks into place. It doesn't even feel mechanical. It just almost feels, you know, it's just a very, very simple click and you're there. So you barely have to use the clutch at all, to be honest. So, but yeah, a lovely machine, and certainly I think one I would consider in the future. I'd like them just to, as I say, just deal with that little bit of buzziness on the handlebars. I think that, again, probably a future iteration of the bike would probably take care of that. And as I say, probably just a couple of little mods in terms of improving airflow and so forth, and just maybe sticking some grip puppies on the bars as well. I think I might be quite tempted by that. Okay, so let's head back into Northampton. But I've got to say, I've really enjoyed that ride. Invigorating, gets the blood pumping. Maybe a year on, I've actually just seen a slightly different side of motorcycling. And still it wants to go. Now, I wasn't able to do this on the GS, but certainly, got to say, that feels absolutely brilliant. And even for a back to the biker with, you know, little sort of you know, experience in terms of bike feel yet, still working on that, I've got to say I feel very comfortable on this. I get the impression on the XR that there's not much going to come past you if you don't want it to, and if you've got the ability. Now, the longer I spend on it, the more I like it, to be honest. I don't think practically I could change, because the RT does so much for me, I think, in terms of the sort of weather protection and the longer distances I want to cover. But there's no doubt at all that if I was in the market for a sort of handful of fun, shall we say, something to put a real smile on my face, get the blood pumping round, and actually explore the whole thing about sort of cornering and twisties and so forth in a, you know, much more what's the word, forensic manner, then this would certainly be a bike that I'd want to consider, I think. Okay, let's get the bike back into Wollaston's now. Thoroughly enjoyed my time on the XR, S1000XR. I wonder whether it's something I might come back to in the future. Probably need to compare it to some other 4-cylinder machines, don't I? But it's a lovely piece of kit. Quite different in nature to the GS, obviously. Got a different engine in. But just this sense of urgency is, I guess, quite addictive actually. I can see why people like it. Okay, so that's back to the bike, signing off. So not an expert review, just opinions, just impressions really. Coming back to the biker. Let me know what you think. Ride safe, and see you next time. Thanks for watching, folks.